Good evening, listeners. We're trying something new tonight. I hope you like it. I work a night shift at a rural vet clinic. What this kid brought in is not an animal. Last summer, some Czech tourists brought in a lynx, found it passed out on the side of the road, and didn't notice the tranquilizer dart sticking out of its back. They just thought, cute kitty, and Googled the nearest clinic. They didn't know it was a lynx, and to be completely accurate, they didn't really bring it into the clinic. They managed to get their car into our driveway before the wild animal woke up, scratched into shit, and then made a glorious escape through the car window. Animal control never recovered the lynx, but then again, they didn't try too hard. There's only 8 police officers in our town. I know all of them, if not by first name, then certainly by last. When I called in after the lynx incident, I was mainly calling so we could share a laugh over how dumb tourists can get. I've worked in vet care for almost a decade now, and that was the only time I ever had to contact the authorities. Until tonight. Tonight, I'll have to call them again, and I'll have to call for backup from Puprad and just about any other city that can spare the men. Tonight, I'll have to call the cops again, and there will be no laughter. Night shifts at the clinic are never busy. Most of our clientele are folks out in the villages. They know their animals well enough to not require midnight help, and even if there is an emergency, they are unlikely to ride the hilly roads after sundown. Most of my night shift work revolves around restocking, admin stuff, and keeping an eye on any overnight patients we have. It's been a slow week. The paperwork I had to manage got knocked out in 15 minutes, and there was no need to restock anything. Our sole overnight visitor, a prize pig from one of the nearby villages, recovering from a skin infection, was doused out on meds and gave no indication of waking up for the next 12 hours. When it started storming outside, I got comfortable with the idea of spending the night alone. The winding roads beyond our town are dangerous in the dark. When they get wet, they turn deadly. As the rain started to tap on our tin roof and thunder rumbled beyond the valley, I rested my head on the desk for a little cat nap. I was pried from my sleep by the shrill cry of the buzzer. Standing outside the clinic, right beneath the rainwater pouring from the roof, stood a red-haired teenage boy. His rusted-up bike was leaning up against the door. In his hands, he held an old milk crate. I was still half asleep when I got to the door. Barely understood what the kid was talking about. He was manic. He pushed the crate into my hands and assured me that the animal that was inside was good and that I should look after it. He also said that people would come looking for it and that I shouldn't give it away because it's a good animal. The kid was in a state of shock. I was drowsy enough to be calm. When I asked him to come inside of the clinic and explain the situation more clearly, the team backed out into the rain. His eyes kept on drifting towards our security camera. He kept repeating that the animal in the box was good. There was a whirring sound coming from inside the crate, just as I registered it. The kid hopped up on his bike and drove home into the storm. The interaction was strange, but I was drowsy enough for everything to feel strange. I called after him, asking for some form of contact information, but his partnership quickly disappeared into the night. With the strained purring sound urging me on, I grabbed the crate and brought it into the operating room. I expected a cat, potentially, a cat that got hit by a car. When I took off the lid of the crate, however, I witnessed something incomprehensible. My shriek woke up the pig. From inside its cage, the big creature's eyes looked up, blinked once, twice, and then receded back into their drug-fueled sleep. The prize pig drifted off, but I was wide awake. I was terrified. The creature that lay in the box was unlike anything I had ever come across in my studies. It looked vaguely like a cat. It looked like a cat, but it had 6 legs and scaly skin, and there was a messy growth of grass on its back. The creature was patiently unnatural. But once the shock of its visage wore off, my instincts kicked in. The animal's paws were twitching. Its slitted eyes were struggling to stay open. The creature was clearly in great discomfort. Even though I was looking down at a being wholly outside the realm of natural biology, my instincts kicked in. The scaly body was heaving in delirium and warm to the touch. Whatever the creature on the table was, it was running a fever. After getting information from a thermometer, I readied an antipyretic and injected the creature in one of its paws. Moments after I pressed in the syringe, the sickly burning stopped and the animal's breathing calmed. Seeing the creature's condition improving didn't calm me. Once the instincts that drove me to treat it dissipated, the animal's incomprehensible form took over my mind again. I didn't know what to do. None of the folks I work with would be awake, and even if they were, they would be none the wiser with how to proceed. I knew my coworkers wouldn't be of any help, but being alone with the strange being was not something I could handle. As the cat creature rests on the operating table, I ran over to the lobby to grab my phone. When I came back into the operating room, the strange animal was still unconscious, but something about it had changed. The growth on its back, the strange mixture of flowers and stalks, it no longer looked wilted. Slowly, as the thing took long, deep breaths, the greenery on the creature's spine started to shift. I called my boss. I prayed that he would pick up and shed some light on why there was a six-legged cat being in our operating room, but the phone stayed dumb. In an effort to convince myself that what I was seeing was indeed real and not the product of some fugue state, I swiped over the camera app and snapped a picture. The photo was clear. What I saw on the screen was just as discomforting as what I saw in the flesh. I stared at my phone, trying to make sense of what was happening, but soon enough my attention was gripped away. Again, the picture had woken up the creature. Cautiously, there was some visible discomfort. The cat thing rose to its paws. Its eyes were a lightish blue hue, and slender like those of a goat. The thing stared at me. I stood there frozen, unable to understand whether the animal meant me harm. The creature itself did not move, yet the growth on its back shivered and grew. A bulbous mass, rose-like in structure, started to bloom on the animal's back. Green tendrils, like cautious tentacles, wiggled their way out of the creature's rose. The appendages moved slowly and suggested no threat. Yet with each breath the being took, they expanded further. One of them bumped up against the metal tray and sent it clattering to the floor. The crash didn't startle the creature much, but it woke up the sleeping pig. Once again, the drowsy eyes looked up at me from the cage. They blinked once, twice, as if they were to close again. And then they saw the cat creature. With unrestrained terror, the prize pig started to squeal. It threw its heavy body back and forth in the cage in a desperate attempt to avoid the sight of the reptilian cat. No tranquilizer could suppress the swine's fear. The six-legged creature did not like the pig either. The moment that the squealing started, the reptilian cat leaped off the operating table toward the high shelves. Without knocking down any of the supplies, it crawled its way over to one of the air vents, reached the cover, and crept inside. The discomforting creature disappeared and calmed down the pig. I was just as shaken by the strangeness of the creature. But I didn't have any fresh stitches. Seizing my instincts, I bit down on the pig to try and calm it. That's when I first heard the buzzer. The sound was mere background to me. I was focused on calming the pig. It wouldn't stop squealing and throwing its body around. It's when they decided the pig needed an injection that I heard the buzzer again. It was followed up by the sounds of shattered glass. The front door had been knocked out. Someone was inside of the clinic. I left the squealing pig behind and made my way towards the lobby. Perhaps it was wishful thinking, but in the moment I thought it was the teen who had dropped off the strange creature in the first place that broke through the door. It didn't occur to me that the visitors might be dangerous or mean me harm. It should have. In the lobby they stood, towering and dumb, all dressed in village garb. There were 3 of them, and they only differed in the clothes they wore. Each of them held a shotgun or a rifle. The moment they saw me, all their weapons had a single target. They didn't speak, no matter how much I pleaded with them to tell me what was happening. They didn't utter a word. Instead, they ordered me around with their rifles. One of the bald giants pointed me toward the edge of the lobby, whilst the other 2 went over to the operating room to investigate. The man left with me stared in my direction, but seemed to be looking past me. There was very little life in his eyes. He was deaf to all my pleas. Off beyond the lobby, I could hear the prize pig squealing in horror. It did not squeal for long. A shotgun blast turned the animal silent. As if the shotgun was a starter pistol for the race of my life, I started to beg for forgiveness again. I told the bald giant that I would run away, that I would never tell anyone what I saw, that I would forget the whole night. His eyes stared past me, and his weapon didn't shift. From the surgery, one of the other bald giants emerged. He still wore a scowl on his face that just said desolate inner life. His rifle was slung across his back. In his hands, he was holding a photograph. A 6-legged reptilian cat. The giant showed the photograph in my face and gestured wildly. He opened and shut his mouth in an attempt to speak, but he couldn't. He had no tongue. He had no teeth. The inside of his mouth was just a cavern of wet flesh. Past my terror. Past my terror, I tried explaining what happened with the team that showed up earlier that night. Both of the giants were deaf to my words. The gun was still being aimed at me. The photograph was still being shoved in my face. No matter what I said, the giants remained threatening and deadly. In the air above, I could hear something rustle. The giants didn't look up. Another shotgun blast sounded off from the clinic. However, they both turned around. In a brief moment of attention, I desperately wanted to run away and call for help. My legs, however, would not budge. When a few seconds of distraction passed, the giant with the photograph grabbed his rifle and set off to the surgery room. The other man's dead stare turned back to me, as did his gun. Off in the operating room, metal trays came crashing to the ground. Another gunshot went off, then another, and the room went quiet. This bald giant's rifle was still pointed at me, but the man's hands were shaking. His eyes kept on drifting off to the side, searching the hall, which led to the operating room for movement. The bald giant was hoping for his comrade to reemerge, but he did not. What came from around the corner shot panties across the giant's dull eyes. Like the tentacles of some horrid sea beast, the vines emerged from the hall. When I first saw them extend from the cat creature's back, they swayed like tree branches in gentle wind. Now they moved like whips, the slick tendrils wrapped around the creature's wrists and sent him crashing to the ground. The tiling cracked beneath the impact of the man's skull. He struggled, but it was worthless. Soon 2 more tendrils emerged to grab hold of his kicking legs, with a trail of blood springing from his forehead. The giant was dragged around the corner. He howled in a terrible low tone. His pained, tongueless shrieks rose in manic notes until finally they whimpered out. From the hallway, I could hear the sound of a full bucket being emptied. Before I found the bravery to go look into the hallway, trickles of crimson seeped around the corner. The prized pig lay mutilated in its cage, barely recognizable. Metal bars twisted around the impact site, a gruesome testament to the shot that ended its life. But the pig wasn't the only victim. The 3 giants who stormed my clinic had met a fate far worse than death. Calling what happened to them killed is an understatement, a lie to comfort the mind. They were torn apart, obliterated. The hallway and operating room were transformed into a slaughterhouse, painted in deep reds, littered with fragments of flesh and shattered bone. The scene is a grotesque puzzle of human remains, unidentifiable pieces of what used to be people. The cat creature is gone as well, the window flung open, curtains gently dancing in the dying storm. I pray it never returns, that it disappears into the night, just like the lynx from last summer. All that is left now is to call the cops. This time, there will be no laughter, no shared joke about foolish tourists or strange occurrences. When the authorities arrive, they won't just find the aftermath of some tragic incident. They'll find a massacre, something unexplainable, something that will haunt them for the rest of their lives.